Good morning, St. Francis. Good morning, people of God. It is Tuesday, the 24th day of October, 2023. Tuesday of the 29th week of the year, the 29th week in Ordinary Time. And once again, it is morning drop-off here at the Franciscan School. Our ever vigilant security force is out there opening up car doors and signs of welcome as our students enter into another day of learning, another day of a wonderful experience here at the Franciscan School. Our girls volleyball team took home the championship last night against the Lions of Our Lady of Lourdes, and so there is a lot to celebrate here at the Franciscan School this morning. The readings for today, Romans. This is a tricky reading from Romans because it is translated incorrectly, and Paul's understanding of it is, again, not as complete as it should be, especially because, again, if he was a scribe or he was a Pharisee, he didn't understand scripture perhaps as much as he did. So what Paul says is that because of one man's sin, death enters the world. And again, that one man's sin is Adam eating a piece of fruit he wasn't supposed to eat. And so there's death that enters the world as a punishment, and sadness and pain, things like that. And then he goes on to say, because of Jesus' righteousness in basically accepting death, Jesus transforms it and is allowing us to be able to, be righteous before God. Okay, that's all fine and well in one way, except that is not necessarily what Scripture says happens. Because if we remember the punishments that are given to the man and the woman who eat a piece of fruit they weren't supposed to eat, none of that is death. None of that is death. And the fact of the matter remains is that if there is a garden and that garden was in a place, the garden needs to be tended and cared for. And that was the responsibility of the man and woman to do so. And so there is this whole situation then about being able to tend a garden. Gardens, have to survive on many kinds of things. It wasn't a magical garden. It was a garden. And gardens survive basically on the death of those plants, that die to become fertilizer to be able to allow plants to grow. It is simple biology, it is physics, it's all these kinds of things like that. God is not operating out of a system that God, in God's own way, created. And so the sense of, again, calling that this eating of this apple, whatever it was, caused death to enter into the world, is not necessarily the way it happened. Death existed, and death was, but what happens is because of the fear of death, sin enters the world. Because of the fear of death, people try to preserve their life at all costs and begin to see things and others and whatever it is as threats to existence, and then begin to create barriers and wars and all kinds of things that bring terror and harm and hurt upon this world. That is how this is. That is how this unfortunately has unfolded. What Jesus does is take away the fear of death. Death loses its sting. It still exists. Again, so the whole idea basically is that if Jesus, again, if Jesus' death on the cross is supposed to get rid of death, it doesn't, because it still exists. But our fear of death does not. Our fear of death should not. And because of that, we can begin to live life differently, see life differently, experience life differently, because we are not afraid of amounting to nothing. We are not afraid of oblivion. We are not afraid of those kinds of things that basically do not work against us, or work against the wonder and glory of who and what we are. It's important to read this passage of Paul correctly, because if we read it incorrectly, then again, it is the sense in which we are responsible for, again, Jesus having to die. We are responsible for Jesus, having to suffer on the cross. And again, and that presents guilt after guilt after guilt, and does not allow for life within us and for life within this world to flourish. The gospel for today is basically the beginning of Luke's great prognostications, his foreshadowings of the Son of Man returning, and the fact that we must be ever vigilant and aware and awake that the Son of Man will return. Again, it is not a return in judgment and condemnation and destruction. It is a return for fulfillment. But if we become lazy, if we become tired, if we become disinterested, if we become distracted, then when the Messiah comes, when the Son of Man comes, we will not be there to receive it. And if we're not there to receive it, then its purpose will kind of be short-circuited. It will make probably things a little bit more difficult for us to be able to see that there is hope and not despair in this world, that there is life instead of just death, that there is a way for us to continue to flourish instead of just becoming frustrated and anxious about many kinds of things. We are a people whose feet are in two worlds. In this world that we live in all of its goodness and wonder, and in that world to come, which is full of promise and hope for us always. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.